You have to insanely and obsessively believe that you can make it happen.
There's no conservative approach because hope is not a method. You have to understand what risks you're willing to accept and be satisfied you have a plan to overcome those risks.
Imagine a world in which you felt like you didn't belong, and your response to feeling like you didn't belong was, I guess I'm growing.
Achieving big goals starts with a roadmap, but the journey isn't always a straight line. Life has its twists and turns, and sometimes plan A just doesn't cut it. In today's episode, we're exploring how to set meaningful goals, adapt when challenges arise, and reflect on making progress to stay on course. We'll hear from inspiring guests who walked this path, sharing their wisdom on staying focused, embracing change, and finding success even in unexpected ways. Let's start with the foundation: how to set your roadmap. Jesse Awuji, a professional NASCAR driver and military veteran, shared his approach to achieving big goals by breaking them down into actionable steps. Here's his take.
The process really is, it's a very simple process. It's not easy, but it is a simple process, right? So first is having a vision. You got to have some type of God-given vision. It can't be just you randomly sitting there and you just make some crap up. Like, it has to be, when I say God-given, like you'll feel it. Like it comes to you over and over and over every single day. This particular vision, this particular idea you feel is right, continues to come to you over and over and over. And it comes to you for the right reasons. If it's immoral or it's coming to you for the wrong reasons, and it's probably not God-given, it's coming from somewhere else. But if you feel like it's right, like you're going to be doing good things, it's going to help elevate your life, elevate other people's life, solve a problem in society. When I say problem, not like you got to go cure cancer, right? Like when I say problem, like people want something and no, there's not enough answers out there for it, and you're providing a better answer for people. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you're solving a problem, right? Like for me, my first business was putting on drag racing events. That's not like a society problem, right? But the issue in Southern California was there wasn't enough drag racing events that catered towards a certain crowd of cars, right? They were all catered towards a certain different group of cars, and people didn't like that. So people were racing in the streets all the time instead. Well, I helped solve that street racing problem. I literally have taken street racers off the street and have them now at these events, so they're not doing this illegal stuff anymore. So I solved the problem, which was a little bit of a society problem, keeping people safe on the streets, but also having these racers give them an outlet to go race. And they're paying money to come, and spectators are paying money to come see them because they want to see these cars and trucks and bikes battle it out. And they're really, really cool builds. So that was the first business where I solved the problem. So have this clear vision that comes to you over and over and over. And then once this vision, you have it, now you have to take the next step, which is you have to insanely and obsessively believe that you can make it happen. That's what I'd say, those two words: insanely and obsessively. Like, there is nothing that can change your mind. Nobody else is right. You're the only one who's right. You know it's going to work, and that's it. Now, you got to be, you have to be humble enough to pivot along the way, because there's going to be times where you start it and maybe like you had this certain direction, but you just need to pivot a little bit so that you can make sure that you get to the overall mission, right? Believe in the mission, insanely and obsessively believe in the mission, but don't commit to just one path. Like, paths can always change throughout the whole thing. You might have to pivot here, pivot there. It just has to happen. But at the end of the day, there's still an overall mission. So insanely and obsessively believe in it, because there's a reason why you have to. The reason why is because the next step, which is the third step, is the action step. You got to take action towards it every single day, whether it's just an email or getting on LinkedIn or Instagram, whatever, marketing to people, connecting with people, networks, meetings, whatever, finding ways to make things better, looking at what the issues were in your last, business deal. What can you do to fix that? How can I be better? Researching, learning, taking classes, whatever it is, just taking action towards it every single day. Because as you put so much energy into something that you had a vision for, like came to you, and you insanely and obsessively believe in it, and then you put action towards it every single day, it will start putting energy back towards you. And it might take a little bit at first, but it will work. Like you will start getting to where you want to go. And so now you go into the fourth step. The fourth step now is faith, right? Because as you start going through this, you had the vision. So you saw the end. You already saw it. The vision is the end. You already saw it. You insanely and obsessively believe in it because you see it, right? If you see something, we believe in it, right? And then you're putting action towards it every single day. Now you have to have faith, because as you're putting that action every day, what you saw in the beginning eventually starts to get very dark. And it always happens. There's never been a time where it didn't happen. It starts getting really dark. You're at the bottom of the mountain. You looked up and you saw the tip. Start walking up that mountain and you're going to get into the forest. And when you're in the forest, you don't see the tip of the mountain anymore. It's dark. And in that forest, there's snakes, there's tigers, there's lions, there's bears, there's pitfalls, there's caves, there's yetis, there's all these things along the way. There's hunters, there's stray bullets flying, there's all these things that are happening. There's people that you're with going up this mountain. Some of them start backstabbing you. Like, there's all this stuff that happens as you're climbing up this mountain. So you have that faith that no matter what, at the bottom of the mountain, I saw the top. So as I'm going through this dark forest now, the top didn't disappear. I can't see it anymore, but it didn't disappear. It's still there. So just keep going, because just as much as it hurts going up, if you're halfway up the mountain, it hurt getting up there, but it hurts just as bad actually going back down. Don't believe me? Go to a mountain, go climb, go hike up a mountain and start coming back down. It hurts the same coming right back down. So why go down? Keep going up. You're crawling. So you have to have faith that the top of the mountain's still there. And then the very end, when you finally get there, or at the very end, the last part of this whole thing, the fifth step is just the whole never quit, right? Because you're having faith this whole time, you never quit. It's not about, in life, a lot of people don't jump into things because they think that, hey, I'm never going to make it, whatever. It's not about that we aim too high and we miss. It's usually because we aim too low and we hit. So don't quit. Don't undersell yourself. Don't quit. Stay with it. You will get there, right? If you keep on showing up to the barbershop every single day, eventually someone's going to give you a haircut. Don't quit. Stay with it. And if you can follow those steps right there, those 5 steps, you'll make it. And also too, don't be an a-hole, right? Help people.
Jesse reminds us that no dream is too big if you're willing to break it into smaller, achievable steps. But even the best roadmaps hit unexpected detours. Captain Larry Brodnicki, who led the Coast Guard during the perfect storm, shared why hope is not a method and how to keep moving forward when Plan A goes overboard. Here's what he had to say.
We're going up and down waves that look like they're as big as mountains. The rudder and propeller keep coming out of the water. We're making 3 knots. 3 knots. You can walk 4 knots. We're making 3 knots. And I just assumed that the Coast Guard helicopter that went out there to get them was going to hoist them, and we're going to get turned around. Nope, didn't happen. The helicopter tries to lower in its basket. The wind is so strong, the basket doesn't go down and almost goes back into the tail rotor. They can't rescue them. Now it's up to us. So we finally get on scene and try to make the approach, something I've done, I'm going to say 1,000 times in real life, in training, on all these different ships. Doesn't work. Just does not work because the weather is too bad. We're a 1,600-ton cork bobbing in the ocean. Can't fight the weather. So what are we going to do? Well, you have 4 forces acting on you. 2 you control, 2 you don't. You control your propeller, you control your rudder. You don't control the wind, you don't control the waves. So how do we use the weather instead of fighting it? Because we found out it was a losing battle. So headed away from the man in the water, turn sideways, let the waves just push us to the man. So then we start rolling, of course, 55 degrees to one side, 55 to the other. It's 110 degrees. After 45, it's easier to walk on the wall than it is to walk on the floor. So then we get alongside. How do you get the guy out of the water? I'm not putting rescue swimmers in the water because I don't know I can get anybody out. So I'm going to have to put my men out on deck. And if you can imagine 55 to one side, 55 to the other side, waves are crashing. A lot of people ask, how big were those waves? And I'll give you the answer. Don't know, but they were really big. Weather buoys are recording waves of 100 feet. Were they really 100 feet? Don't know, but I know they're really big. Now, when I put my crew out on deck, I've confidence in the stability of the ship. But once you put the people out on deck, they could get washed overboard. And so one of the biggest concerns I had was, do I attempt this mission or not? If I do nothing, before the sun rises, the Air National Guard crew is going to be dead. How do you stand there and consciously make a decision to watch somebody die? But if I attempt a rescue and my rescue team are swept overboard by the waves and I can't get them back as a result of my decision, some of my shipmates are killed. Don't do anything, people will die. Attempt to rescue, even more people can die. There's no conservative approach. You can't go into a situation like that hoping for the best because hope is not a method. You have to understand what risks you're willing to accept and be satisfied you have a plan to overcome those risks. My crew is well-trained, high level of skill, a lot of experience. But the key for me is they work together extremely well as a team. And this is a team effort. So the rescue team snags the man in the water as if he's a fish and then hauls the net up on deck. And one thing is, you have to think about this. 160-pound man 1,600-ton ship. If there's a collision, who loses? So even though we're alongside, I mean, there's still no guarantee that everything is going to come out successful. Well, we got the first one aboard, and that was the injured one of the injured rescue jumpers. He had massive internal bleeding, had broken a lot of bones, ribs, damaged his internal organs. What he needed was a trauma center, not the deck of a rocking, rolling Coast Guard ship out in the middle of the ocean. We got the co-pilot, brought him on board. Finally, we rescued the pilot and the flight mechanic. Flight mechanic was not wearing an exposure suit, even though it was required by the conditions of water temperature, air temperature. He was suffering from severe hypothermia. So even though we're on scene, there's no guarantee that these folks were going to live. And unfortunately, in all of this, we never saw anything, never found anything for the first pararescue jumper who jumped out. And unfortunately, he lost his life serving his country on a rescue mission. And that's very sad to me. But in all of this, as I've been talking about, there are decision points all along the way. Change any one of those decisions, and you change the whole way the story unfolds. If that first Coast Guard pilot decided to put the people in the water and try to rescue them at night, and he couldn't find them, he couldn't rescue them, and somebody was dying, number 3 is dying from hypothermia while you're trying to rescue number 1, story turns out differently. If I let the skipper on the sailboat have his way and not rescue him until it got nighttime again and the little monsters came out from underneath the bed, we wouldn't have been available to go after the Air National Guard crew. If I had taken the long route so my crew could get some sleep going around Cape Cod, we wouldn't have got there in time and we wouldn't have been available for the crew. If the helicopter pilot decided, gosh, I got one more chance with enough fuel to try to refuel, he would have gone down. If we got alongside, when normal way of, every time we do something, we do it this way, standard operate, didn't work. What if I gave up? I could have done that. And no one would have faulted me for that because this was such a high risk thing. There was no guarantee you could save anybody. If any of my crew members fell overboard and I couldn't get them back, then people would be looking, why did you decide this mission? So, I mean, there's just so many decisions there, and you have to make the decision on the spot. And it's not like you form a study group and come back 3 weeks later with a 50-page document on what's the right thing to do. When this was all done, the National Search and Rescue School did a case study on us. And I'm not sure you want to be the subject of a case study. But as I was talking about all the decisions, not just mine, other people's as well, when they were all done, they said that what was done doesn't have to be the perfect, doesn't have to be the best way, it just has to be successful. And every time the risk went up, we went up to meet the risk. And then the risk went up again. We went up. We just kept going up, up, up. And not just me, but the other folks, decision makers too. What's the risk? What risks are you willing to accept? What is your plan to overcome those risks? And everybody, I think, has been in a situation like this. You're in a situation that you can't control. You have to make difficult decisions when you don't like any of your options. And unless you're working together as a team, this is never going to be successful. And maybe not to this extent out in the perfect storm, but in everybody's lives, they've come across the same situation.
When obstacles arise, it's not about holding on to a failing plan. It's about recalibrating and forging ahead. Reflection is a critical part of the journey. Garrett Biss shared a practical exercise for looking back on what's working and what needs adjustment. Here's his advice.
My definition of the sobriety versus recovery. So I understand sobriety as an absence of a substance or behavior in somebody's life. Recovery is making the intention or the determination that you're going to do things to help your life get better. I love that definition and that focus on recovery more because to me, somebody can make progress in their life. Maybe they have a return to use, or maybe they have a time where they, make a mistake, but you haven't lost everything that you gained. So a lot of people that just focus on their days of sobriety, if they have a return to use, then their foundation, if their foundation for self-esteem and self-worth and identity was all wrapped up in a certain number and they lose that number, the potential consequence is they lose also that positive self-identity and everything that came with it. If we're focusing on recovery, if I start my recovery journey 5 years ago, then I haven't lost that recovery journey, and I have to recognize the growth and the changes that have taken place in my life and the new capacity or the new ability that I've developed. So I love focusing on recovery as opposed to just, a sobriety or an abstinence period. So let's let's step back. So we're talking about white knuckling. So I think there certainly is a period in your life where it's going to be much more difficult. This new lifestyle that you're stepping into is going to be much more difficult. And there probably is a period of white knuckling for a lot of individuals. That's not a bad thing. It's a bad thing if that becomes your life and that's as far as you want to go. Now, everybody's recovery journey is going to look different. It's not for me to define what somebody's recovery should look like. If somebody is doing something and they don't like the way that their life presently is and they want to continue to progress beyond that, then that's, then I think that's where they need the encouragement, the tools, or the resources to kind of move forward. A lot of people ask me, why do you work with people in recovery? Of all the people that you can work with, why do you want to work with people that have struggled with addiction in their life? And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I think that life is a lot like a pendulum. So especially a person's potential is a lot like a pendulum. And the further it swings in one direction, the further into the depths of pain and suffering that somebody experiences, the further the potential to swing in the other direction. So that depths of the pain and the suffering and the heartache that you've experienced creates a greater capacity to develop and increase compassion, understanding, determination. And for somebody that's taken that first step into their recovery journey, if they can capitalize on that same willpower and determination and capacity that they started their journey with, and they can continue to leverage those character traits or those innate strengths that they have, there's nothing stopping how far they can get. And I think that's a beautiful thing. With the right tools and resources, somebody that's taken that journey out of the darkness, there's no stopping how far they can get to. For me, it was the coaching that I received and the mentorship was reconnecting with myself and my strengths that I have. I think our minds are hardwired to remind us of all the defects and all the mistakes that we've made. It's a natural hardwiring in our mind. It's a survivalist technique. Any mistake that we made in the past, we want to try to avoid that in the future because it could become a future threat. However, the wins and successes that we've had in our past, those aren't going to come back and threaten us in the future. So we can be very quick to kind of set those aside or forget about them, and they kind of go back into our subconscious. So our natural hardwiring is to remember the negative things so that we can avoid future threats. Unfortunately, if all we're thinking about is the mistakes that we've made and the weaknesses and the things that we can't do, this doesn't really give us a great sense of self-worth and confidence to lean into our life and really express our true potential. So even though that's our natural state, we can intentionally plug into and remind ourselves of the strengths and of the wins that we have. One of the first things I typically do with veterans that I work with that have struggled with addiction is I call it, giving yourself credit where credit is due. So the first thing is, let's make a list of 100 wins and successes that you've had in your life. The normal response I get is like deer in the headlights. Like, what are you talking about? I'm only 25. I'm only 35. I haven't had 100 wins or successes, which is a litmus test or an indicator to me just where their mindset is. And of course, like if you can't think of things that you've done in your life that you've been successful at or value that you've provided or brought to your life, then it can be very hard to find that sense of self-worth to lean into and continue to do the hard work to grow and to evolve. So again, one of the first exercises, usually listing 100 wins and successes. And the opposite of that is many people say, hey, let me list all the defects I have and let me list all the mistakes. And they're like, give me a couple more pieces of paper. I'm going to need to continue this list. Focusing on the wins and successes that we have, it can be hard at first, but once you kind of get the ball rolling and people kind of get into the groove with it, it's very easy. And when we can remind ourselves of those things, one of the things I've got a list right next to me. So one of the last times I did a list of 100 wins and accomplishments, it's a great exercise to go through and it can get you in touch with the value that you do have as an individual. But being reminded of that is much more effective because again, our natural hardwiring, I think, is to remember the things that we're messing up or the things that we haven't done that we want to do. So it gives us a little bit of an antidote to that and helps us fuel that sense of self-worth and that connection to the strengths that we do have to kind of move forward. So that was a long answer to how my journey started, but it was getting connected with myself, finding that authenticity, which we already talked about, learning how to listen to who I am and find out who I am and bring a more authentic version of myself to the connections that I'm trying to experience. Because then the connections that we experience when we're that authentic version of ourselves, they satiate that need much more. They provide a much greater sense of safety, security, and self-worth so that we can move forward. And then lastly, getting in touch with and constantly trying to stay in touch with what brings joy and a sense of meaning into my life.
But reflection isn't just about looking back. It's also about recognizing how far you've come, even when you feel like you're not enough. That's where imposter syndrome often creeps in, especially when we're pushing ourselves to grow. RJ Jenkins shared a powerful insight on why those moments of doubt are actually signs that you're moving in the right direction. Here's RJ.
I think part of the issue here for me is that imposter phenomenon, again, commonly referred to as imposter syndrome. This is how culture is speaking about these feelings so aggressively and assertively that it's almost impossible to step out of the syndrome language. And I think it's language like syndrome that makes us think that there are stronger connections between things like this and anxiety and depression than there might be. I think the belief that imposter feelings are bad are contributing to anxiety and depression. Not the imposter feelings themselves, right? The imposter feelings themselves are natural, organic, healthy responses to aspiration and striving. It is the belief that imposter feelings are bad. It is the belief that someone who experiences imposter feelings are somehow broken. It's that perception that I think can contribute to feelings of anxiety and depression. So what's wild about this is that it's not the feelings themselves that are causing the problem. It's our belief that the feelings are bad that is causing our problem. What's wild is that I think there's an entire generation of people out there who have been harmed by what they've been told about these things. And so much of my work is about trying to repair that framing. I think what we need is a reframe here. Imagine a world in which you felt like you didn't belong in a place, even though you had signs all around you that you were deserving of being there. And your response to feeling like you didn't belong was, wow, I guess I'm growing. Right? In other words, what if your response to imposter feelings was the same as your response to being sore after a good workout? When you work really hard at the gym and you come home sore, you don't think, man, I'm broken. You think, wow, I'm getting stronger. And I would love to see that kind of a physiological understanding of discomfort applied a little bit more to some of these feelings of discomfort that we have in other aspiring or striving scenarios.
RJ's perspective is a reminder that self-doubt doesn't mean you're failing. It's proof that you're stretching beyond your comfort zone and growing into the person you're meant to be. Whether you're just setting out on your journey or recalibrating after a detour, remember that success isn't a straight line. It's about setting a clear roadmap, adapting when plans change, and reflecting along the way. And if you're looking for a community to walk this journey with you, join our virtual walking group on the Strava app. It's a place to find encouragement and accountability as you tackle your goals one step at a time. If this episode inspired you, share it with someone who might need it, and let's keep building momentum together. And as always, you can catch the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast on Reese Across America Radio, available on platforms like iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and the TuneIn app.